First, we will have a speech by Professor Carl-Henrik Helldin, the chairman of the board of the Nobel Foundation. Speech, of course, the laureates' entrance, the laureates that take the seats on the stage. First in line, we have the physics laureates Isamu Akasaki, Hiroshi Amano, and Shuji Nakamura. Followed by chemics laureates Erik Betzig, Stefan Hell, William Murner. Medicine laureates John O'Keefe, May-Britt Moser, and Edward Moser. And Jean Tirole in economics, and Patrick Modiano, literature. Physics laureates, the chemics laureates, the medicine laureates, literature and economics, all disciplines represented here on stage, while we're listening to March in D Major by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Prince Carl Philip with Sofia Hellqvist, his fiancée, and Princess Madeleine with her husband Chris O'Neill. And her sister, Crown Princess Victoria. And her husband, Prince Daniel. And now time for Professor Carl-Henrik Helldin, Chairman of the Board of the Nobel Foundation.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel laureates, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Nobel Foundation, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you all to this year's Nobel Prize Award ceremony, which is held to honor the laureates for their outstanding contributions to science and literature. In particular, I would like to wish the Nobel laureates and their families welcome to this ceremony. Earlier today in Oslo, Kailash Satyarthi and Malala Yousafzai received the Nobel Peace Prize for their fight for children's rights. This is a prize for something very fundamental: the right to education and a safe childhood, regardless of religion, gender, or ethnicity. Not least, it is important to provide education for girls. To tackle the challenges humanity faces, education cannot be a privilege for an exclusive group. It is fundamental for development and peaceful coexistence between nations and people. Without access to education, none of the Nobel laureates that we celebrate today and who are present on this podium would have been able to accomplish their fantastic achievements. Alfred Nobel's vision for his prizes was that those who have conferred the greatest benefit on mankind should be rewarded. This year's Nobel Prizes have been awarded for achievements that already have benefited, or most likely will benefit, mankind in profound ways. We are gathered here to celebrate discoveries that gives us bright, white light using very little energy, that enable us to explore the tiniest details of cells, that explain some of the complexity of the brain with the neurons that are activated when we navigate in our environment, and literature that explores the art of memory and the destinies of human beings trying to find their way in their surroundings. And finally, an important analysis of how to structure markets for the benefit of society. The discoveries that today are being awarded Nobel Prizes are the result of inspired and hard work. In some cases, established truths had to be challenged. In other cases, skeptical environments had to be overcome. The achievements of the laureates illustrate that for scientific breakthroughs to happen, scientists need freedom and a long-term perspective. Needless to say, they also require long-term funding, which allows them to take on ambitious projects. If scientists did not dare to take on difficult tasks with no guarantee of success, scientific breakthroughs would be scarce. Some people claim that in order to make a scientific breakthrough, you have to be lucky. Although an element of luck may be involved, I do not think this is enough. Most successful scientists will probably agree that they have benefited from some luck, but many have also seen a clear pattern. The harder they work, the more luck they seem to have. Alfred Nobel lived in the latter part of the 19th century, an era that had many similarities to ours. It was a time of major scientific advances, improved communications, rapidly increased trade, and growing international enterprises. Alfred Nobel was himself intimately involved in all four of these areas of development. But it was also an era, just like ours, of strong social and environmental challenges, with anti-intellectual and xenophobic tendencies, and with the military build-up, with ruthless nationalistic actions and obvious threats to peace. In times like these, Nobel's vision is more important than ever. The importance of education and research cannot be overestimated. We need inspiring stories and individuals that stimulate us to learn more and to act. In order to support and promote the vision of Alfred Nobel, the Nobel Foundation has initiated various outreach activities, including museums in Stockholm and Oslo, where the work of the 889 Nobel laureates is on display. And through our digital channels, their stories are shared with people all around the globe. Moreover, interdisciplinary meetings have been organized in Sweden for the past 3 years in order to deepen the dialogue between the scientific community and the rest of society. During these events, a wider audience is given a chance to interact with scientists, many of whom are Nobel laureates, and engage in discussions on topics that concern us all. The themes so far have been the genetic revolution, energy, and yesterday here in Stockholm, aging. The plan is to arrange similar events also outside Sweden. In Stockholm, we look forward to establishing a new home for the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Center will be a place with broad public activities, scientific meetings, and events. This new platform will give us the unique opportunity to address major issues that are crucial to our world and to our future, issues that affect us all as individuals in our everyday existence. Dear Nobel laureates, you are role models and authorities. We hope that you will continue your important work and also in the future make important scientific discoveries and write excellent books. However, there is more. They say that noblesse oblige. I think you will also find that Nobel oblige. You will find that the Nobel Prizes you have been awarded will open doors. People will ask for your advice, and they will listen to your opinions. You will be able to exert influence. You will have the opportunity to explain to the general public the importance of science as a way of finding solutions to important problems. And you will be able to promote the recruitment of young talents to science by sharing your own experiences with them. Participation in such activities, of course completely voluntary, would be well in line with the vision Alfred Nobel expressed in his will, that the prize he installed should promote activities for the benefit of mankind. Thank you.
Henrik Henrin, Chairman of the Board of the Nobel Foundation. And before presenting the Nobel Prizes in Physics, we will hear some more music from Francis Poulenc. Now, time for Professor Anne L'Huillier to present the 2014 Nobel Prize in Physics, which is being awarded to Professor Isamu Akasaki, Professor Hiroshi Amano, and Shoji Nakamura.
Eders Majestäter, Eders kungliga högheter, mina damer och herrar. I många sagoberättelser är ljuset en makt mot onda krafter.
In many fairy tales, light is a power that is used to overcome the forces of the evil. In Lord of the Rings, by Tolkien in 1954, the elf queen gives the ring bearer a glittering crystal vial and says, "May it be a light to you in dark places.
When all other lights go out. Må det vara ett ljus till dig i mörkret när alla andra ljus har slocknat."
When our ancestors learned to master the fire about 300,000 years ago, they used
användes
it
den inte
not
bara
only
för
as a source of
värmens
heat
skull
or as a
eller som
weapon
vapen mot de
against
vilda
wild
djuren.
animals.
Elden lyste i mörkret när alla andra
The fire
ljus
shined in
hade
the dark when
slocknat.
all other lights had gone out.
Vid slutet av
In
1800-talet
the late 19th
lyckades
century, the American inventor
amerikanen
Thomas Edison was able to
Edison
improve the incandescent
förbättra
light bulb to make
glödlampan
it usable.
så att den blev användbar. Det sägs att
It
det
has
tog
been
honom
said that
omkring
it took him
2000
around
försök
2,000 experiments
för
to
att
succeed.
lyckas. När andra människor
people said
påstod
that he had
att han
failed,
hade misslyckats,
He replied,
svarade han: Nej,
"No,
jag har inte
I haven't
misslyckats.
failed. I've
Jag har
found
kommit på
2,000 ways
2000
not
sätt
to
att
make a light
inte
bulb."
göra en glödlampa. Samtidigt som
As the
elnätet
electrical power grid
utvecklades och
expanded
glödlampan
and the light
förbättrades,
bulb improved,
fick
millions and
snart
soon
miljarder
billions of
människor
people
en
gained a
billig och
cheap
hållbar
and sustainable source of lighting.
belysning.
The
Glödlampan
light bulb shined
lyste i
in the
mörkret
dark when
när
all other
alla andra
lights
ljus
had gone out.
hade slocknat. Efter andra världskriget
After the Second World War,
utvecklades
electronics
elektronik
based on
baserad på
semiconductor
halvledarmaterial.
materials was
Man
developed.
upptäckte tidigt att vissa kombinationer
Scientists
av
discovered at an early stage
halvledare,
that certain combinations
lysdioder,
of semiconductor
kunde
materials,
avge ljus.
diodes, could emit
I en
light.
glödlampa hettas en
In a
tråd
light
upp
bulb,
så att
filament
den
is
börjar
heated
lysa.
so that it begins
I
to
en
shine.
lysdiod omvandlas
Light-emitting
elektrisk
diodes
ström
transform
direkt
electricity
till ljus.
directly into
Och den är
light
därför
and
mer
are therefore more
effektiv än
efficient
glödlampan.
than light bulbs. In
Lysdioderna
Europe,
kallades
they were called
Europa
crystal lamps
kristalllampor,
since they're made of
eftersom
crystals.
de är gjorda av
In the United
kristall.
States, they were
Och
called
i USA
LEDs.
LED, Light Emitting Diodes. De första
The first
lysdioderna
LEDs
lyste
emitted
rött.
red light.
En kort tid därefter
Soon afterward
kom dioder
came
som
LEDs that
lyste
emitted
grönt.
green light.
Vi vet
If
att
you
om man
mix
blandar
red,
rött,
green
grön
and blue
och
light,
blått får
you
man
get
vitt.
white.
För att skapa
Creating
vita
white
ljuskällor
light sources
behövdes
also required
alltså också
blue
blå
LEDs.
lysdiod.
From the
Från
1960s,
1960-talet satsade
industry and universities invested a lot of effort to
stora
create
forskningsresurser
blue LEDs.
för att skapa blå lysdioder. Men
but the necessary gallium
Gallium-nitrid
nitride
kristallerna
crystals
som
turned
behövdes
into a powder.
blev bara ett pulver. Många
Many
försökte,
researchers tried,
misslyckades och gav upp.
failed, and gave up.
I början av
In the early
1970-talet
1970s, a new technique
utvecklades
for
en ny
growing
teknik för
gallium
att växa
nitride crystals was developed.
galliumnitridkristaller. Detta ledde
This
till
led
nya
to new research
satsningar
efforts,
nya
new
försök
experiments,
och
and new
nya
failures.
misslyckanden. Det var helt
It
enkelt
simply was too
för
difficult.
svårt. Isamu Akasaki
Isamu
och hans
Akasaki and
nuvarande
his
doktorand
PhD student
Hiroshi Amano
Hiroshi
vid
Amano
Nagoya
at the
University
Nagoya University in Japan,
samt Shuji
as well
Nakamura,
as Shuji
då forskare
Nakamura,
vid ett
then
litet
researcher at
företag
the
i
small
Tokushima
company
i
in
Japan,
Tokushima,
lyckades
succeeded
där
where
alla
all
andra
others had given up.
hade gett upp. Efter
After
flera
several
år
years
av
of hard
hårt
work in the
arbete
late
i slutet
1980s,
på
with great
1980-talet
persistence,
med
skill,
mycket
and perhaps a
envishet,
bit of luck,
skicklighet och kanske
they
lite
were
tur
able to produce fine gallium
kunde de
nitride
tillverka
crystals
fina kristaller av
and give them the
galliumnitrid
properties needed
och
for
dessutom ge
efficient
dem de
light
egenskaper
emission.
som behövdes för att emittera ljus effektivt. De gjorde säkert
The
många
laureates
fler
certainly
försök än
performed a lot more than
2000
2,000
och
experiments,
kom på många sätt
and they
att
found
inte göra
many
en
ways
blå
not to
lysdiod.
make a blue LED,
Men till slut
but they
lyckades de.
succeeded in the end.
Tack vare den blå
Thanks to the blue
lysdioden
light emitting
kan vita
diode,
lampor
it
tillverkas.
became
Idag
possible to
finns de
produce white
överallt.
lamps.
I våra
Today,
mobiltelefoner,
these are
på
everywhere.
våra
In
cyklar,
our mobile
i våra
telephones,
bilar,
our bicycles,
i våra
our cars,
städer,
our cities, and our
i våra
homes.
hem.
By
Genom
using
att använda
an
en
LED lamp
LED-lampa
for
för
lighting
belysning
instead of an
istället för en
incandescent
glödlampa
light bulb or a
eller ett
fluorescent lamp,
lysrör
we save
sparar
energy
man energi och
and therefore
skyddar
protect
man
the
därmed
environment.
miljön.
An
Dessutom
LED
har
lamp
en
also has an
LED-lampa
incredibly
en
long
otroligt
lifetime,
livstid,
approximately
uppskattningsvis
100,000
timmar,
hours or about
cirka 11
11
år.
years. Since it is so efficient, it can shine for many hours using the electricity from a battery, which can be charged using sunlight. LED lamps light up places on Earth where there is no electrical power grid. They shine in the dark when all other lights have gone out. More than a century ago, Alfred Nobel wrote in his will that the Nobel Prize in Physics should be awarded to those who shall have conferred the greatest benefit to mankind.
Genom sin upptäckt eller uppfinning hade gjort mänskligheten den största nytta.
This year's prize fulfills Alfred Nobel's wish extremely well.
Professor Akazaki, Professor Amano, Professor Nakamura, you have been awarded the 2014 Nobel Prize in Physics for your invention of efficient blue light-emitting diodes, which has enabled bright and energy-saving white light sources. On behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, it is my honor and pleasure to convey to you the warmest congratulations for your outstanding work. I now ask you to step forward to receive your Nobel Prizes from the hands of His Majesty the King.
And first, Isamu Akazaki from the Meiji University and Nagoya University in Japan, receiving a medal, a special diploma, from the hands of His Majesty the King of Sweden. Here at the front row we see people from the Japanese delegation. And now time for his co-laureate, Hiroshi Amano from Nagoya University, Japan. Front row applauding from left, Princess Madeleine with her husband Christopher O'Neill, and to the right, Prince Carl Philip with his fiancée Sofia Hellqvist. And now, Shuji Nakamura, University of California, Santa Barbara. Incandescent light bulbs lit the 20th century. The 21st century is lit by LED lamps, thanks to these three gentlemen and Nobel laureates from this day on. We will hear a presentation of the Nobel Prize in Chemistry now by a speech by Professor Måns Ehrenberg.
Eders Majestäter, Eders Kungliga Högheter,
Majesties, Royal Highnesses, ladies and gentlemen. This year's
Nobelpris
Nobel Prize in Chemistry rewards the development of super-resolved fluorescence microscopy, which has made visible essential details and movements of the molecules of life. This development conquered a physical limit described by Ernst Abbe in 1873, implying that objects of smaller dimensions than half of the wavelength of light cannot be discerned by optical microscopy. Harder still seemed Abb's law, and stern were its prescriptions, but the Norns had a different view, and the fate paved the way not for just one, but for two ways to surpass Abb's magical limit. As a young man, Stefan Hell thought that one day he would conquer that vexing limit defined by Abbey. But he wasn't clear about how. In 1994, he published his theory for how to conquer Abbey's limit. Two laser beams shine on the structure of interest in a fluorescence microscope. One beam excites the fluorescent molecules in a volume determined by Abbey's limit. The other beam rapidly brings all the excited molecules, except those in a volume that can be made arbitrarily small, to their ground state before they can emit a photon. 6 years later, he demonstrated this method experimentally. He called it stimulated emission depletion microscopy. This was the first method to bypass Abbey's limit, and now we will turn to the second. In 1989, William Mørner studied light absorption by fluorescent molecules in a crystal matrix at minus 269 degrees Celsius. He then realized that he was the first person in the world to actually observe single fluorescent electronic dipoles. Single molecule spectroscopy was born. Now a quick jump ahead to 95. Erik Betzig was tired of university life. He wanted to do something else, but could not stop thinking about how to use single molecule detection and fluorescence microscopy to eliminate Abb's damned limit. It was well established that when fluorescent groups that label a biological structure are further apart than Abb's limit, they can be localized with unlimited precision. However, with such sparse labeling, there would be big information holes in the structure. To solve this problem, Betzig would have to navigate between the scale of Abbey's limit and the Charybdis of the information holes, and he was frustrated. He theoretically described these concepts in 1995, but there was no obvious way to implement them in practice. Betzig left the university world and went into exile, but the basis for a practical way to implement his concepts would soon come from Mørner's single molecule characterization of an amazing variant of the green fluorescent protein. Mørner discovered in 1997 that a new variant of GFP could be activated from a non-fluorescent to a fluorescent state using light of a wavelength that was very different from that of the exciting light. This GFP molecule served as a molecular lamp that could be turned on and off by an optical switch. When Betzig finally came back from his exile, the solution to his problem was thus within reach. He developed a method where the biological structure is labeled with optically activatable GFP.
Att de aktiva molekylerna satt längre från varandra än Abbes gräns och därigenom i välbestämbara positioner.
Then, another small fraction of the GFP molecules are activated so that also they can be superlocalized. This is repeated until a large number of such images have been created. Finally, all these images are combined into one super-resolved image with complete structural information. Betzig published his method in 2006 and called it photo-activated localization microscopy.
PAL. Stefan, dein Mut, auch in schwierigen Zeiten, deine Vision zu verfolgen, wird Generationen von zukünftigen Wissenschaftlern inspirieren. To all three of you, thank you for sharing your magic with all of us. Dr. Betzig, Professors Hell and Mørner, you are being awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the development of super-resolved fluorescence microscopy. On behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, I wish to convey to you our warmest congratulations, and I now ask you to step forward to receive your Nobel Prizes from the hands of His Majesty the King.
Said Professor Måns Ehrenberg, member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences and a member of the Nobel Committee for Chemistry. Erik Betzig from Janelia Research Campus, Howard Hughes Medical Institute in Ashburn in the United States of America. Stefan Hell, Max Planck Institute for Biophysical Chemistry, Göttingen, and German Cancer Research Center in Heidelberg, Germany. Their family and friends in the audience here in the Stockholm City Concert Hall. And finally, William Mörner from Stanford University in California, United States of America. Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2014 to these gentlemen for having brought optical microscopy into the nano dimension. And now time for some more music. Glitter and Begay from Candide by Leonard Bernstein. Performed by soloist Elin Rombo.
disease take the place of honor lost? Can they compensate for my fallen state, purchased as they were at such an awful cost? Bracelets, lavaliers, can they dry my tears? Can they blind my eyes to shame? Can the brightest brooch shield me from reproach? Can the purest diamond purify my name? And yet all these trinkets are endearing. I'm oh so glad my sapphire is a star. I'd rather have a 20-carat earring. If I'm not wrong, at least my jewels are. Enough. I'll take the diamond necklace and show my noble stuff by being gay and reckless.
Performance there by Elin Rombo and the Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra. Glitter and Begay from Candide by Leonard Bernstein. Alfred Nobel had an active interest in medical research, actually, when he was alive. Physiology or medicine was the third prize area Nobel mentioned in his will in 1895. And therefore is the third prize that will be awarded here today. And we will first hear a presentation by Professor Ole Kien, who is a member of the Nobel Assembly at Karolinska Institutet
Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel laureates, ladies and gentlemen. We do it every day, many times a day. You did it when you came to this Nobel Prize ceremony. You found your way. And when you entered the room and sat down, you immediately knew where you were, and you got a sense of the place. Should you come here again, you will know that this is the Stockholm Concert Hall and not any other concert hall in the world. The ability to orient in space, to find our way, and to remember places that we have visited is essential to survive, both for animals and human beings. For this to happen, we need our brain and our inner GPS. But where in the brain is the positioning system, the inner GPS, located? And how can nerve cell code such abstract mental activities? The work of this year's Nobel laureates in physiology or medicine has given us answers to these fundamental questions, which are among the greatest in neuroscience. In the late 1960s, John O'Keefe performed experiments in rats that were moving freely around. And while they were doing that, he recorded from nerve cells in the structure deep inside the brain called the hippocampus. Here he discovered cells that were active only when the rat was in a specific location in the environment. When it moved to other places, new cells were active. He called these cells place cells. The place cells report the position of the rat and build up an inner map that represents a mental picture of the environment. O'Keeffe suggested that memory of a place may be stored as a specific combination of place cell activities. By these groundbreaking experiments, O'Keeffe showed how specialized nerve cells encode an awareness of space so that familiar as well as unfamiliar environments may be recognized. More than 30 years after O'Keeffe's discovery, May-Britt Moser and Edward Moser discovered an amazing pattern of nerve cell activity in a brain region near the hippocampus called the entorhinal cortex. Here, certain cells with their name GWIT cells were active when a rat was at several places. When a GWIT cell was active, its activity formed a hexagonal GWIT pattern in the environment. The Mosers showed that this hexagonal GWIT pattern was not imported from the environment, but generated entirely by activity in the brain. The activity of many GWIT cells provides the brain with a coordinate system that divides the environment into longitudes and latitudes that allow us to keep track of how far we are from a starting point or a turning point as we navigate our environment. The Mosers' groundbreaking discovery showed that the brain holds a mental representation of a coordinate system that can be used to find the way in the external world. Continued research showed that GWIT cells, together with other types of cells in the entorhinal cortex, form a circuitry with place cells in the hippocampus. And together, these nerve cell circuitry constitute a positioning system in the brain, an inner GPS. Today we know that humans also have place cells and GWIT cells, similar to the one that was found in rats. So your place cells and GWIT cells may have made it possible for you to find your way here tonight, to have an awareness of where you are in this magnificent hall and recognize it should you come back. Without these cells, you could easily get lost in space. Professor John O'Keeffe, May-Britt Moser, and Edward Moser, the discovery of the place and GWIT cells, key elements in the brain's positioning system, is a paradigm shift in our understanding of how groups of specialized nerve cells work together to execute higher brain functions. Through brilliant experiments, you have given us new insight into one of the greatest mysteries of life, how the brain creates behavior and provides us with fascinating mental proficiencies. On behalf of the Nobel Assembly at Karolinska Institutet, I wish to convey to you our warmest congratulations. May I now ask you to step forward and to receive the Nobel Prize from the hands of His Majesty the King.
British-American John O'Keeffe, currently director of the Sainsbury Wellcome Central in Neurocircuits and Behaviour at University College in London, now receiving his Nobel Prize. May-Britt Moser, Norwegian, currently director of the Center for Neurocomputation in Trondheim. She studied psychology at the University of Oslo together with her future husband and co-laureate Edward Moser, who's next up to receive the Nobel Prize from His Majesty the King of Sweden. And the daughters Moser are with us in the audience today. Edvard Moser, born 1962, currently director of the Kavli Institute for Systems Neuroscience in Trondheim. Stand just on the N, as in Nobel and as in Norway. It is now time for some more music, this time by Edvard Grieg, after this Norwegian, British, but mostly Norwegian, if you count the number of laureates anyway, Nobel Prize in Medicine. A Dream from 6 Songs. Dream from six songs, performed by soloist Elin Rombo, music composed by Norwegian composer Edvard Grieg. And now time to present the 2014 Nobel Prize in Literature. And we will hear a speech by writer, PhD Jesper Svenbro, member of Swedish Academy.
Eders kungliga högheter, ärade Nobelpristagare,
esteemed laureates,
mina damer och herrar.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Knappt 10 år
Barely a decade into Patrick Modiano's oeuvre, we come across the following important paragraph.
Jag var bara 20 år gammal.
I was only 20, but my memory preceded my birth. For example, I was sure of having lived in occupied Paris since I remembered certain characters of that epoch, and small unsettling details such as are never mentioned in history books. However, I tried to resist the weight pulling me backwards and dreamt of being freed of my poisoned memory. I would have given anything to be stricken with amnesia. Here, Modiano had abandoned the staccato rhythm characteristic of his first three novels and discovered in Villa Triste, 1975, the meditative legato we now associate with his novels. But the road to it, which was also the road to his masterpiece, Dora Bruder, 1997, could not be taken for granted. If we take Modiano at his word, he was 20 when he discovered the horrifying sphere of experience that had befallen him. Occupied France with its collaborators and shady small-timers, incarnated by an elusive yet cherished father figure. Readers who, from the mature novels, come upon his debut, will inevitably be taken aback when the door is flung open to the noisy room of the main character's consciousness, in which the contradictory reality of the occupation years is presented as a cruel farce with the protagonist, Raphael Shlemylovich, in the role of the sixth of the Marx brothers. Clearly, it was not easy in the mid-1960s to come to terms with the reality of the occupation. Still, Modiano courageously and independently took up this challenge in his first three novels, and together with director and co-scriptwriter Louis Malle in the controversial film La Combe Lucien from 1974. His exploration of the history of the occupation, still synonymous around 1970 with the legends of the resistance, was independent, not least in that it was completely inopportune. In other words, the revaluation of the Vichy period undertaken by the American historian Robert Paxton around 1970 and now largely accepted was anticipated by the young Modiano, who, with his extraordinary, intuitive understanding of the life world of the occupation, might even be said to have fulfilled a mission. 1975 saw the publication of Villa Triste, no doubt a turning point in Modiano's development towards the calm prose associated with his name today. The title seems at first to refer to an elegant yet melancholy resort in the French Alps, but this impression is deceptive. Though not a word suggested, Villa Triste is the Italian term for the buildings where the fascists tortured opponents during the last years of World War II. Seen against this background, the break between the first three novels and Villa Triste becomes less important. The title discreetly points both to a harrowing past and to a seemingly innocent amnesia, cancelled 20 years later in Dora Bruder. In novel upon novel, Modiano has developed his ability to use almost non-existent documentation, old telephone numbers, street addresses, to endow the past with entrancing life, and his Parisian cityscape with a singular voice. Magnificently, his work instantiates what an earlier Nobel laureate, Simonsini, called the poetry of place. Dear Patrick Modiano, Alfred Nobel's testament stipulates that the Nobel Prize for Literature be awarded to the author of the most outstanding work produced during the preceding year. In many earlier cases, the time aspect had to be disregarded, but this year it is highly relevant. In 2013, a 1,000-page volume entitled Roman was published, comprising 10 of your previous novels. Though in one sense a reprint, this is also a new totality, not reducible to the sum of its components. For this collection allows us to understand how your little music is part of the grand one, with its variations, echoes, and repetitions, as autobiography merges with fiction, inviting us to reread your entire oeuvre, including those novels not selected for the omnibus edition but forming part of the same
Avec ces
vertiginous
variations,
project.
ces échos, ces reprises, lorsque l'autobiographie côtoie la fiction, nous invitant à la relecture de votre œuvre entière, y compris les romans qui ne sont pas inclus dans le volume, mais qui appartiennent au même projet vertigineux. Maintenant, cher Patrick,
Dear Patrick Modiano,
permettez-moi
may I convey to you the warm
d'adresser
congratulations
des
of the
chaleureuses
Swedish
félicitations
Academy
de l'Académie suédoise en vous priant
and
d'avancer
invite you
pour
to receive
recevoir
the
des
Nobel
mains de
Prize
Sa
for
Majesté le
Literature
Roi,
from
le
the
prix
hands
Nobel
of
de
His
littérature.
Majesty the King. Patrick Modiano is awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature for the art of memory with which he has evoked the most ungraspable human destinies. The city of Paris, often present in the text. And his latest work is the novel Pour que tu ne te perdes pas dans le quartier, which appeared this year. And now, after this French Nobel laureate, some French music by Georges Bizet, Fandol from L'Arlésienne Suite numéro 2, performed by the Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra under direction of Tommy Andersson. by French romantic composer Georges Bizet, suitably between two French Nobel Prizes. First to author Patrick Modiano, and now time for the Sveriges Riksbanks Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel, prize that was instituted in 1968, to French Professor Jean Tirole. Here is Professor Tore Ellingsen, Chairman of the Economic Science Prize Committee. Someone who is very strong has to be very nice also. That is what Swedish children's author Astrid Lindgren says about this title character in the 1947 book Do You Know Pippi Longstocking? Pippi has caught two thieves and made them cry, but as a farewell present she gives them each a gold coin to buy food. Astrid Lindgren was hopeful and visionary, but not naive. She saw that not all those with power are good or even responsible. In her 1954 book, Mio, My Son, the evil Sir Cato has a heart of stone. And only a sword that has been forged for thousands of years can penetrate a heart of stone. What, then, is the magic sword that can cut through stone? This sword is a law that creates prosperity and justice. At one time, the law of the strong prevailed. The ruler's word was law. But eventually, in country after country, the decrees and whims of the sovereign have given way to parliamentary laws and voluntary contracts. The sword is ours to live together. When political power is open to democratic competition, we act together to monitor and replace governments. Our common sword performs its magic feats without spilling a drop of blood.
Utför vårt gemensamma svärd sitt magiska verk utan att spilla en droppe blod. Men hur är det med den ekonomiska?
But what about economic power? Who monitors and replaces the owner of a company? Often the answer is that no sword is needed. Even a baker with a heart of stone sells good bread at reasonable prices. Because if the bread tastes bad or is too expensive, the baker will have no customers. But in markets without room for more than one or a few companies, customers have nowhere else to go. There, a sword is needed. Most countries have public authorities that regulate transport, postal and telecom companies, water companies, power grids and banks. They also have authorities that monitor large companies, even in the bakery trade, to make sure that they do not abuse their power. They must not prevent new bakeries with better recipes from entering the marketplace. How shall we encourage powerful companies to act in the best interest of society? A good regulatory system should balance many objectives. On the one hand, we want to reward good performance. On the other hand, we do not want to spend tax money unnecessarily. On the one hand, we want to tax excess profits. On the other hand, we do not want to wipe out profits that will enable a company to survive. On the one hand, we want well-run productive companies to grow large. On the other hand, we do not want old companies that were yesterday's best to stand in the way of new companies that will be tomorrow's best. For generations we have pondered these issues and failed to resolve them. Jean Tirole realized that we needed new tools to find the answers. With the help of game theory, He has shown how we can understand behavior in markets with a few players, how the decisions of companies depend on their opportunities to improve efficiency, their information, and their opportunities to sign binding contracts. He has shown how we should curb natural monopolies when the regulator has less information than the company. He has shown how regulators themselves can become players and how rules should constrain them as well. He has shown how competition laws should reflect the peculiarities of each individual industry, from banking to telecommunications, search engines, and social networking services.
Dear Professor Tirole, once upon a time we sought a magic sword that would cut through any stone. Then, one day, a new blacksmith arrived. He forged many swords, each of them stronger and more flexible than any we had seen before. And he showed us which sword cut through which sort of stone. Finally, on each sword, he engraved Voltaire's commandment: "Un grand pouvoir impose une lourde responsabilité." With great power comes great responsibility. You are that blacksmith. It is an honor and a privilege for me to convey to you, on behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, our warmest congratulations. May I now please ask you to step forward and receive your prize from the hands of His Majesty the King.
Now time for Jean Tirole, who is active in Toulouse, chairman of Toulouse School of Economics within the University of Toulouse, to receive the 2014 Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, or as it is called, the Sveriges Riksbanks Prize in Economic Sciences, in memory of Alfred Nobel. You will see some of Jean Tirole's his wife, Nathalie, to the right, and his children here in Stockholm, in the audience. Now we will hear the Swedish national anthem. Yellow and blue flag, and the Norwegian red, white and blue flag in the background. Princess Christina to the left there, we saw a little bit of her. Crown Princess Victoria. Patrick Modiano, Jean Tirole, Edvard Moser, Michael Moser, John O'Keefe, William Erner, and in blue, Queen Sylvia, King Carl Gustaf, and behind him, Crown Princess Victoria's husband, Prince Daniel. The chairman of the Speaker of the Swedish Parliament, Urban Ahlin, in the center of the picture, and here are the three physics laureates: Isamu Akasaki, Hiroshi Amano, and Shoji Nakamura. Now we're entering into the chemistry laureates in the picture here. The Queen of Sheba's Festivity March by Swedish composer Hugo Alvén. While that music is playing, the guests the royal family are leaving the auditorium. As a matter of fact, they won't be leaving quite yet. Normally, the Nobel laureates are staying on stage, and as time goes by here, in a couple of minutes, when the auditorium has been emptied, we will see some selfies perhaps, and some family pictures being taken, and the more joyous ambiance will spread among the friends and family of the Nobel laureates. Here, for instance, the Moser family in the audience. Family and friends of Nobel laureates, we have representatives of the scientific and literary community in Sweden, and international guests, and several representatives from Swedish political life. We saw pictures before of people in the Swedish government, for instance.